She live-streamed her harassment. Turns out she live-streamed her downfall. Every morning that Lexus sat sideways across my driveway like she owned the dirt under my boots. And the day she called the cops on me on my own land was the day she learned the badge on my belt wasn't for decoration. If you've ever stood your ground against the wrong kind of power, you're going to want to hear how this one ends. If stories of justice on the open range hit home, tap subscribe and stick with me. There's more truth, grit, and ranchside reckonings on the way. Clayton Reed stepped out onto his porch just as the first hard line of Montana sunlight cut across the ridge. He wasn't a man who wasted mornings. Years of wildfire work had burned that habit out of him. But today, the sunrise felt more like a taunt than a gift. His eyes went straight to the ranch driveway, to the gravel path he'd driven down thousands of times without thinking. And just like the past 3 mornings, a gleaming silver Lexus sat sideways across it, angled with the kind of intention only pettiness could create. Marjorie Hale again. Clayton exhaled through his nose, slow and steady, the way he used to calm rookie firefighters before they walked into smoke. He'd hoped yesterday's silence meant she'd finally grown bored of whatever game she was playing. But seeing that polished SUV blocking his road killed that fantasy fast. Today was the one morning he couldn't afford this. He had a wildfire training session in less than 2 hours. Equipment to haul comes gear to test. A dozen volunteers counting on him. And here he stood, stranded on his own land like a trespasser. He grabbed his coffee, though he barely tasted it, and stepped off the porch. The crushed gravel crunched beneath his boots as he crossed the yard. The Lexus's engine was cold, the windows tinted, no sign of movement, but the message was exactly the same as yesterday. You're not going anywhere until I say you can. Clayton set the coffee cup on his truck bed and walked toward the SUV. He didn't bother knocking on the window this time. If Marjorie was watching, she'd come out on her own schedule. That was her favorite performance, showing up like she'd descended from some HOA cloud to enforce community order. A ranch that had existed 50 years before the HOA even formed, but that didn't seem to matter to her. Sure enough, the sound of a door opening carried across the morning air. Marjorie Hale strode out of her house with purposeful steps, clipboard tucked under one arm, sunglasses perched like armor. She didn't greet him, didn't apologize, didn't even pretend. "You're early," she said, tapping her pen as if keeping time. "I haven't finished my morning access inspection." Clayton bit down on the first reply that wanted to come out. Instead, he crossed his arms. "Marjorie, you're blocking my driveway." "I'm monitoring community access," she repeated as though reading from a script. "This road leads directly onto HOA-managed surroundings, and I need to be sure no unauthorized operations are occurring. We've had concerns." Concerns? Clayton tightened his jaw. About what? Large machinery, noise, environmental impact. She gestured vaguely toward the barns. "You understand?" "No," Clayton said, voice flat, "I actually don't." She gave him a patient smile, a practiced, patronizing thing. "Let's not escalate this. I'll move when I'm finished." Finished. The word hung there like she was granting him a privilege. Clayton looked at the blocked road, then at the rising sun. Every second mattered this morning. He had volunteers waiting on a ridge 2 counties over. He had a responsibility. Not the kind you can delay because a woman with a clipboard has decided she's queen of the gravel road. But anger wouldn't fix this. Not now, not with her. Marjorie thrived on drama. Pushing back would only hand her fuel. So Clayton swallowed the irritation, the pulse thumping in his jaw. "I need to leave within 10 minutes. "You'll leave when my inspection is complete," she said, turning her back to him. Just like that, he felt the old wildfire instinct rise. A surge of heat that wasn't anger so much as readiness. Except there was no burning ridge here. Just a woman who believed a homeowners association gave her authority over a ranch she'd never set foot on. He waited, silent, as she scribbled something on her clipboard, glanced at his truck, and pretended to study the property boundary signs he'd replaced last year. She was stalling, obviously, purposefully, and he knew it. When she finally returned to her Lexus, she rolled the window down just enough to speak through the crack. "Clayton, for your safety, make sure you're operating within community guidelines. Wouldn't want misunderstandings." Then she drove off like she hadn't just cost him 20 precious minutes. Clayton climbed into his truck, turned the ignition, and tried to let the engine noise drown the irritation lodged under his ribs. But as he backed out, one thought kept circling. She didn't do this by accident. She was targeting him, but why? And how far was she planning to take this? He didn't know yet, but the answer was waiting just around the next bend, and it wasn't going to be pretty. The next morning, Clayton walked toward his gate, expecting the road to be clear. Instead, something white fluttered in the breeze from a nail jammed into the wooden post. He pulled it free and immediately felt his pulse crawl up his neck. Notice of unauthorized land operations, community safety alert. It wasn't official. It wasn't even formatted like a real HOA document, but the bold red lettering, the self-declared compliance warning, and the vague legal language made it look legitimate enough to fool anyone who didn't know better. He scanned the bullet points. Unregistered heavy machinery present on property. Suspicious land alterations observed. Potential violation of environmental guidelines. Every line was a lie. He folded the notice in half, then again, gripping it so tightly the paper creased under his fingers. Something about the wording, the tone. It didn't sound like simple annoyance from a nosy neighbor. It sounded like someone building a case. Clayton walked to his truck, intending to ignore it for now. But before he could climb in, a familiar voice called from the fence line, "You get one too." Eli Turner leaned on his posture rail, denim jacket dusted from morning work, eyes narrowed with concern. Clayton held up the notice. Eli nodded grimly. "Yeah, she dropped one at my place yesterday. Said she's reviewing all border properties. Asked me if I'd seen you hauling questionable materials." Clayton froze. "She said, what? That you've been running heavy machinery at odd hours. That she's keeping notes." Eli's voice dropped. "Clay, she's telling folks you're violating some kind of community safety ordinance." "That ordinance doesn't apply to this ranch," Clayton said. Eli shrugged. Facts don't seem to be slowing her down. Before Clayton could answer, gravel crunched behind them. Deputy Owen Briggs climbed out of his patrol truck with a tired look. Clayton recognized someone forced to deal with nonsense before he'd even finished his first cup of coffee. Owen approached with a folded document in hand. "Clay, we need to talk." Clayton raised an eyebrow. "Please don't tell me this is official." "No," Owen said, "but it's circulating." He handed Clayton a photocopied page. Marjorie's handwriting, unmistakable, scrolled across the top. "Community Safety File. Subject, Clayton Reed." Clayton's jaw locked as he read the list of observations beneath it. Frequent use of large vehicles not logged with HOA. Possible unauthorized land expansion. Pattern of evasive behavior. Evasive behavior, Clayton muttered. "I'm checking fences and hauling feed." Owen exhaled. "Look, man, she's taking this seriously. She's telling neighbors she's assembling records for review. People think she's preparing something formal. That's ridiculous." Clayton snapped. "The ranch predates the HOA by half a century. She has no jurisdiction here." "Clay, I know that. You know that. But she's talking like she's building a case file for the county." Some folks might believe her. Clayton looked from the notice in his hand to the forged compliance file to the empty road where Marjorie had staged her blockades. The pattern was finally clear. She wasn't just annoying. She was methodical. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was escalation. "Why me?" Clayton asked quietly. Eli answered before Owen could, because you're the only one out here she can't control. She can't stand that this ranch sits outside her little bubble. Owen tapped the folder. Clay, you need to document everything now. Every notice, every incident. If she keeps pushing, this might turn into something we have to formally handle. Clayton nodded, but irritation dug deeper into his gut. He didn't like being cornered. He didn't like being lied about, and he hated the feeling of someone trying to shape a narrative around him. Did she talk to anyone else? He asked. Eli kicked at a patch of dirt. Teenagers, retirees, the new couple on the ridge. She's getting people to watch you. Says she's establishing patterns, files, violations. Clayton felt something click, a cold shift from irritation to a sharp-edged awareness. This wasn't neighborhood noise. This was someone deliberately laying groundwork. And if he didn't push back soon, her lies could spread faster than he could stop them. Owen folded his arms. Just so you know, people are starting to whisper. Not many, but enough. Don't give her room to twist anything. I won't, Clayton said. But even as he spoke, he saw Marjorie step onto her porch across the road, clipboard in hand, sunglasses hiding her eyes, watching them. She lifted the pen like a gavel and scribbled something. Clayton's gut tightened. This wasn't over. This was the opening move, and she was just getting started. By the end of the week, Clayton could feel the shift in the air. Not in the weather, but in the way people looked at him. The first sign came when he stopped by the feed store in town. Usually, the older ranchers swapped stories or offered an extra set of hands. But today, a couple he barely knew stepped back when he walked in. Another man glanced at Clayton's truck through the window and whispered something to his wife. It hit him on the drive home. Someone had primed them before he even arrived. When he pulled up to the ranch house, Eli Turner was waiting at the fence line again, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "Clay," Eli called out, "got something you need to see." Clayton approached, bracing himself. Eli held out a folded sheet, another photocopy. This time the header was bolder, underlined twice. Community notice, potential safety risk, resident alert. Below it, a bulleted list. Unstable behavior observed. Operating heavy vehicles without oversight. Community reports of late-night activity. Potential environmental disruption. Clayton's jaw tightened. She's escalating. That's not all, Eli said. Town folk were talking this morning. They said Marjorie's been canvassing door-to-door. Canvassing, campaigning, recruiting. Doing what? Clayton asked. Telling folks you're running unlicensed operations out here, that you're a risk to the neighborhood. She's got people taking notes on your schedule, your truck, your equipment, who comes and goes. Says she's building a community-backed record. A cold, unfamiliar sensation slid down Clayton's spine. He wasn't afraid, but the idea of strangers tracking his movements on the ranch, a place meant to be quiet and private, unsettled him more deeply than he expected. He folded the notice sharply. "This is harassment. It's more than harassment now," Eli said. "She's turning people. Folks see a typed notice with her name on it. They assume she's got authority. She doesn't, I know." "You know, but she's convincing the ones who don't." Clayton walked toward the barn, needing to move. He checked the diesel tank, his tools, the quad bike, routine tasks. But today they felt like checking for cracks in the walls of a fortress. He found nothing out of place, but the unease didn't leave. Around noon, he spotted motion near his mailbox. A teenager, one of the kids from the next subdivision, pretended to tie his shoe while holding his phone angled toward the driveway. The moment Clayton stepped outside, the boy bolted down the road. Clayton muttered under his breath, "She's got kids spying now." He went inside and grabbed the thick HOA binder he'd kept from the day he moved in. Leafing through it, he confirmed what he already knew. Not one rule applied beyond the HOA boundary. The ranch, with its old fences and survey pins sunk deep in the soil decades before, was exempt from every single bylaw. She had no legal footing at all. But she didn't need legal footing. She needed enough noise to create suspicion. Early evening brought the next hit. Owen Briggs called, voice low. "Clayton, you around?" "Yeah, what now?" "I got an anonymous call at the station saying there's heavy machinery running late at night near your property. Caller claimed it was potentially unsafe." Clayton stared at the tractor parked beside the barn. It hadn't moved in 3 days. "Anonymous," he repeated. "Everyone knows who it is," Owen said. "But until she uses her name, my hands are tied." Clayton blew out a slow breath. "She's trying to bait a report tied to my property." "Feels like it," Owen agreed. "Clay, I think she's preparing something. The way she talks to people, it's like she's gathering witnesses." There it was again, the word that kept surfacing. Witnesses file record. She wasn't annoying him, she was constructing a case. "Thanks for the warning," Clayton said. "You need anything, call me and start documenting." "I am." After they hung up, Clayton walked the perimeter of his ranch, boots crunching across packed dirt. The old cedar posts casting long shadows. The land had always been his anchor, quiet, steady, unchanging. But now even the stillness felt charged, as if the trees themselves were waiting for the next strike. By the time he returned to the house, another paper had been slipped under his door. He didn't need to unfold it. He recognized the formatting immediately. Community Safety File, updated observations. He opened it anyway. Resident appeared angry when approached by neighbors. Unverified machinery noises heard this week. Possible noncompliance with environmental standards. Further documentation required. Clayton crushed the paper into a tight ball, not because he was losing patience, but because he recognized something pivotal. These weren't random notes. They were sequential, organized, purposeful. She wasn't documenting incidents. She was writing a narrative, one that made him look unpredictable, unstable, potentially dangerous. A narrative designed so that when she finally made her move, the community would already be primed to believe her. Clayton stood still in his doorway, jaw set, pulse steady. "How far will she push this?" he murmured. The answer arrived seconds later in the form of Marjorie herself. She marched past his gate, clipboard held high like a badge, phone recording. "Evening, Clayton," she said, not stopping, "just making additional notes for our safety committee. Cooperation is expected." She didn't wait for a reply, didn't need one. She already believed the story she was writing. Clayton watched her disappear up the road, the tension in his chest sharpening into something harder than irritation. Determination. If she wanted a legal battle, she'd get one. But he wouldn't play her game. He'd build something stronger. Truth, evidence, and law. But how far would she push before he had to respond? Clayton got his answer 2 mornings later. He stepped outside before sunrise, expecting the quiet rhythm of ranch life. Instead, his headlights hit something that froze him mid-stride. Not one vehicle this time. 2. A white Lexus angled across the entry road and a dark blue crossover parked perpendicular behind it, forming a clean, deliberate barricade that sealed the ranch off like a quarantine zone. He stood there for a long second, pulse steady but cold. This wasn't improvisation. This was planning. As he approached, he heard voices and saw flashes of light. A phone camera was rolling. Marjorie Hale stood in front of the blockade wearing a reflective vest she absolutely did not need, waving her clipboard like she was landing aircraft. "There he is," she announced into her live stream. "Subject approaching." This confirms active operations without HOA authorization. Clayton stopped a few feet from her, jaw hardening, moved the vehicles. Marjorie didn't even turn her phone away. "You're currently in violation of community oversight procedures. I've issued notices. This is a documented pattern. I will not move until an officer arrives to verify." "Officer," Clayton said. "You called the sheriff." "I reported a threat," she said loudly, ensuring the live stream caught every syllable. A resident exhibiting escalating behavior. He stared at her, stunned for only a moment before the realization snapped into place. She wasn't gathering notes, she was building a legal pretext. "What threat exactly?" Clayton asked. "My safety is irrelevant," she said, dodging the question. "The community must be protected." She tapped on her phone screen. "Yes, dispatch. I need to update my report. The resident is now approaching aggressively." Clayton took a step back, palms open, his restraint absolute. "I'm not approaching aggressively. I'm trying to leave my property." Documenting, she said into the camera. Resident is becoming confrontational. He felt the shift in stakes immediately. This wasn't about a blocked road anymore. This was about the record she was assembling, the one she planned to weaponize. The notices, the whispers, the surveillance. This blockade was the moment she'd been preparing for. Her accomplice, the driver of the blue crossover, barely made eye contact. A younger man, uncomfortable but standing firm behind her. Clayton spoke slowly. "Move your vehicles. This is a county easement." "That's under review," Marjorie snapped. "You don't get to endanger the rest of us with unlicensed operations. I'm preserving evidence." His jaw tightened another notch. "By blocking my exit, by preventing further escalation," she said, "my job is to protect this community." "You don't have a job," Clayton said. "You're a volunteer for an HOA that doesn't govern this road." Her eyes gleamed with triumph. "We'll let the sheriff decide." Her arrogance didn't shock him anymore, but the ease with which she twisted facts did. She believed her own narrative so completely that she was blind to the line she just crossed. Blockading a county easement wasn't just petty, it was illegal, something she either didn't understand or didn't care about. She angled her phone closer to him. "State your name for the record." He refused to look at the camera. "You already know my name." "Then confirm your intent here," she pressed. "Why are you trying to leave the property in such a hurry?" "I have obligations," he said, keeping his voice level. "Move the vehicles or I'll need to contact the sheriff's office myself." "I already made the call," she said smugly, "and when they arrive, they'll hear the truth." Clayton stepped back from the situation, not retreating, reassessing. His training kicked in. When someone is escalating intentionally, you preserve your position, not your pride. Minutes later, Owen Briggs's familiar patrol truck rolled around the bend. Clayton didn't relax. Owen's presence meant the situation had officially become a matter of record. Marjorie straightened like she'd been vindicated by divine intervention. "Deputy, over here." Owen stepped out, eyes scanning the blockade, the phone camera, Clayton's rigid posture. He approached cautiously. Professionalism in every step. "Morning," Owen said. "Someone called in a complaint." "Yes," Marjorie said, "I did. I've been documenting unauthorized land operations and escalating behavior. This resident is endangering our community." Clayton raised a hand. "Owen, she's blocking the ranch road." "You know this easement is county recognized." "Let me assess," Owen said, palms out neutrally. He walked to the Lexus, then the crossover, then back to Marjorie. "These vehicles are obstructing access." "As they should," she insisted. "I'm preventing a violation from continuing." "Ongoing violation of what?" Owen asked. She lifted her clipboard. "Unauthorized operations, heavy machinery, environmental risk." "He refuses to comply with community guidelines." "Marjorie," Owen said evenly, "none of those guidelines apply to this ranch. They do when community safety is at stake," she barked. "And I have a record to prove it." Clayton watched as she attempted to hand Owen the bloated file of scribbled observations and printed notices. He recognized how desperately she wanted legitimacy, how badly she needed someone with authority to validate her fantasy. Owen held up a hand. "I need to review whether any of this has legal standing." "It does," she insisted. "I've been documenting for weeks, and I'm going to need to see the property deeds and easement papers before making any determination." Clayton nodded once. "I can provide them." Marjorie snapped. "Don't let him distract you. He's been hostile all morning. Owen looked between them, the tension stretching taut. I'm not making any decisions until I review documents on both sides. Both sides. Clayton understood immediately. That phrase meant the dispute was now formally logged, recorded, investigated. Exactly what Marjorie wanted. She smiled triumphantly like she'd just maneuvered him into a trap. Owen cleared his throat. Marjorie, move your vehicle so Clayton can access his road. She froze. Deputy, that would compromise my safety. Move them, Owen repeated, firmer this time. Her mouth tightened, but she obeyed, signaling to the younger man. The blockade broke with a squeal of tires. Clayton didn't speak, didn't gloat, didn't react. But the stakes shifted sharply in that moment. This wasn't a neighborly dispute anymore. This was an investigation with him at the center. And now the question hung in the air. How would the sheriff's office react to her official false threat report? The answer came faster than Clayton expected. By noon, Owen called again. His voice was lower than usual, tight with the tension of someone caught between duty and friendship. Clay, I need you to come by the station this afternoon. Captain wants to review the incident. Clayton leaned against the barn wall, dust settling around his boots. I didn't make a threat. I know, Owen said, but she filed it formally. Procedure requires us to document your side. The stakes shifted again. Now this wasn't just an annoyance. It was a line in his personnel file unless he handled it cleanly. I'll be there, Clayton said. But before he hung up, Owen added, bring anything you've got. Deeds, maps, anything showing her jurisdiction claim is bogus. That single word, anything, hit harder than he liked. It meant the station wasn't brushing her off. It meant her story had enough meat to raise questions internally. Clayton drove to the station with a folder of documents stacked beside him. Inside were surveys dating back decades, easement agreements, and a notarized letter from the county confirming road access rights. The truth was airtight. But in situations like this, truth wasn't the only currency. Presentation mattered too. Inside the sheriff's office, Captain Morris greeted him, arms folded, expression unreadable. Read, Morris said. We've reviewed Ms. Hale's report. Clayton sat. And she accuses you of approaching her in a threatening manner, refusing to comply with safety inspections, and attempting to intimidate her into dropping community oversight. Clayton blinked once. There is no community oversight on my property. Morris held up a hand. I'm not saying she's right. I'm saying she's organized. Her notes are structured. She's spoken with multiple neighbors. Some corroborated seeing tense interactions. Of course, she would spin bystanders into supporting actors. Clayton set the folder on the desk and slid it forward. This ranch predates her HOA. All their bylaws end at that ridge line. This, he tapped the folder, is every document you need to verify that. Morris opened it, flipping through pages, leaning closer when he hit the survey map. Owen stood beside him, watching carefully. After several minutes, Morris exhaled. This is solid, very solid. Clayton didn't relax. He could feel the next sentence brewing, but Morris added, until we conclude an internal review, we need you to avoid contact with her unless absolutely necessary. Clayton bit back a sharp retort. She comes onto my property. Document it, Morris said. Don't engage, just record. Clayton nodded slowly. He understood the game now. She was escalating in ways designed to provoke him. The next move she wanted was a blow-up, something she could twist into proof. He wouldn't give it to her. After leaving the station, he drove straight home, the weight of the meeting pressing harder than he expected. The moment he parked, he grabbed an old metal lock box from his closet and set it on the kitchen table. One by one, he placed each deed, survey, permit letter, and county easement document inside. Then he grabbed his old GoPro cameras, the ones he used during wildfire training, and began placing them discreetly around the ranch entry. If she wanted a record, he'd give her a real one. He spent the next hour walking the fence line, checking posts and verifying property markers. Each step grounded him. The pines stood tall, unmoving, absorbing his frustration. Silence enveloped the ranch, thick and steady as though the land itself was bracing for what was coming. The stillness gave him clarity. He needed more than documents. He needed a legal buffer. He dialed a number he hadn't used in months. "Sarah Coleman," a crisp voice answered. "Sarah, it's Clayton Reed." "Clayton," she said, surprised. "What's going on?" "I've got an HOA president manufacturing allegations. I need a land rights attorney before she drags me into court." Sarah paused. "Tell me everything." He did. Brief, factual, no emotion, just the patent, the notices, the blockade, her live stream, and now the sheriff report. When he finished, Sarah let out a slow, controlled breath. "She's building an evidentiary chain, Clayton. It's flimsy, but she's creating the illusion of structure. If she files a civil complaint, it'll become a headache unless you count her with hard proof." "I've got the proof," he said. "I just don't know how far she's planning to take this." "She'll take it as far as she thinks she can win," Sarah replied. "Send me digital copies of everything. I'll start a counterfile." "Counterfile," he repeated. "You build a case while she's building hers." Sarah said, "You don't wait for her to attack. You establish the truth first." As he hung up, Clayton felt the weight lift. Not much, but enough. He wasn't alone anymore, and he wasn't unprepared. When evening came, he stepped outside. The ranch sat in near total silence. No cars, no watches, no notes pinned anywhere. It was the quietest day he'd had in weeks, but Clayton recognized that kind of silence. It was the kind that settles right before a storm, and as he stood there among the pines, he knew Marjorie hadn't backed off. She was planning her next move. The question now was whether the documents in Clayton's possession and whatever Sarah could pull together would expose the HOA's overreach before Marjorie's narrative spread beyond control. By dawn the next morning, Clayton had already scanned his deeds, easement agreements, survey maps, and every piece of correspondence he'd collected since moving to the ranch. He uploaded everything to a secure drive and sent it to Sarah with a note. "Use whatever you need." Her reply came 10 minutes later on it. "Start recording everything, every encounter, every vehicle, every voice." That instruction proved vital before noon. Clayton had just finished loading feed into the barn when he heard tires crunching on gravel. Slow, deliberate, intrusive. He stepped outside and saw a black SUV he didn't recognize pulling up to his gate. A man in a button-up shirt stepped out, clipboard in hand. "Morning," the man called. "I'm here about the ongoing inquiry into property compliance." Clayton walked toward him, keeping his posture steady. "Who are you?" The man flashed what looked like an ID badge, but Clayton had seen enough real government credentials to know a laminated HOA badge from a distance. "Name's Brett," the man said. "I'm assisting Ms. Hale with documentation." "That documentation doesn't apply to this ranch," Clayton said. "Your HOA has no jurisdiction here." Brett's voice carried that false professional calm. "We've received multiple community concerns. I need to inspect the property line and verify environmental conformity." Clayton glanced at the GoPro mounted under his porch light. Good, it was recording. "Unless you have a court order or county authorization," Clayton said, "you're trespassing." Brett shifted, face tightening. "Sir, this doesn't have to be confrontational." "You're behind a locked gate," Clayton replied, "and you're not coming any farther." Before Brett could respond, another voice spoke from behind. "Everything okay here?" It was Owen pulling up in his patrol truck. Brett immediately lifted his clipboard like a shield. "Deputy," he said, "I'm conducting an official HOA safety inspection." Owen stepped between them. "This land is outside your HOA boundary. You've got no authority here." Brett looked insulted. "Ms. Hale said the boundary is disputed." Owen let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Then she's wrong. And if you step past that gate, You're subject to trespassing charges." Brett hesitated, eyeing Clayton like this was some kind of test he was meant to pass. Then, clearly unhappy, he returned to his SUV and drove off without another word. When he was gone, Owen turned to Clayton. "She's sending people now. She's trying to mimic official authority," Clayton said. "Make it look like a legitimate investigation." Owen nodded. "She's building her case in public, not in law. That's dangerous. Dangerous, yes, but also sloppy." Everything Brett had said was captured on camera. Every lie, every admission of HOA involvement. It was evidence, and Sarah confirmed that when Clayton sent her the footage. A few hours later, Sarah called. "I've reviewed everything. The road is unquestionably a county easement. Blocking it is a violation under state statute, and the HOA has absolutely zero reach here." She paused. "But Clayton, her behavior suggests something bigger than an overzealous neighbor." "Meaning what?" "Meaning she's trying to create a pattern of accusations that could justify a civil action. If she files a nuisance complaint or tries to claim environmental harm, she might think she can get a temporary injunction on your operations." Clayton felt his jaw tighten. "On my ranch, that's what she's aiming for." Sarah said it won't hold. "But if a judge grants an emergency injunction before hearing your side, you could lose days or weeks of access to your own road." Now the stakes were crystal clear. "What do we do?" Clayton asked. "We build a stronger record," Sarah said. "Better than hers, more accurate, more official, properly time-stamped. Photographs, video evidence, witness notes, county records, easement maps, property boundary markers." She added, "I'll draft a formal notice stating that any further attempt to enter your property or obstruct the easement will result in legal action." That was the first time since this began that Clayton felt the momentum shift, even slightly. After the call, he grabbed his work gloves and walked the entire length of the easement. Every post, every marker, every legal boundary was exactly where it should be. He photographed everything, documenting date and time. When he reached the far end of the road, he found something new. A small orange survey flag staked just outside his fence line. Fresh, bright, deliberate. Clayton crouched, examining it. No marking, no county tag, absolutely not official. He pulled it up and tucked it into his jacket pocket. When he returned home, he found another envelope lodged in his mailbox. Community Safety File. Phase 2 observations typed, neatly formatted. Inside were accusations that went beyond nuisances. Potential for hazardous spill from machinery. Unauthorized land grading. Repeated hostile responses toward HOA representatives. Ongoing investigation recommended. Clayton read every line, feeling the cold, methodical tone settle deeper with each accusation. This wasn't a neighbor meddling. This was groundwork for an injunction. That evening, Clayton called Sarah again and sent copies of the new notice. She responded immediately. "This is good," she said. "Good?" he asked. "For our case," she clarified. "She's displaying a pattern of fabricated authority and false reporting. This strengthens your counterfile." As night fell, the ranch felt unnervingly still, as if waiting for the next move. Clayton stood on his porch, arms crossed, feeling the weight of the conflict pressing forward with unmistakable direction. She wasn't stopping. She wasn't slowing down. She was escalating with confidence. But now Clayton had evidence. Real evidence. The kind that held up in a courtroom. But would Marjorie stop or escalate? Clayton got his answer at sunrise the following Tuesday. When he stepped outside, coffee in hand, the air wasn't quiet. It was staged. Marjorie's white Lexus sat at a hard angle across his driveway again, but this time it wasn't alone. A second compact SUV, silver, unfamiliar, was parked nose-to-nose with it, forming a perfect choke point across the gravel easement. And there she was, Marjorie Hale, standing dead center between both vehicles, clipboard tucked under one arm, phone held high like a reporter covering breaking news. A small ring light clipped to the top made her live stream glow unnaturally bright in the morning haze. Clayton didn't have to get any closer to know she was broadcasting to an audience. "And this is day 19, she announced, panning her phone toward the ranch. "As you can see, the subject has resumed unauthorized land operations without community sign-off. We are documenting for the safety board and for law enforcement if they ever decide to do something." Clayton muttered under his breath. Unbelievable. He stepped forward, staying deliberately slow, controlled. He didn't look angry. He knew the camera would twist whatever emotion he showed into evidence against him. Marjorie spotted movement and swung her phone toward him dramatically. "There he is, the individual we've been monitoring." "Sir," she called out, "per community regulations, you are required to wait for inspection." "Marjorie," Clayton said evenly, "move your vehicles." "No," she smiled sharply. "Not until I complete today's assessment. You're blocking a county easement." Temporarily, she corrected. "For safety." He didn't bother arguing. Instead, he reached into his jacket, pulled out a small laminated card, and held it up so she could see his deputy credential. Not his badge, not yet, just enough to warn her. Her live stream viewers reacted instantly. Clayton heard faint pings and message tones from her phone. Marjorie's eyes narrowed. "What exactly is that supposed to prove?" "Jurisdiction," he said. "Move your cars." She lifted her chin, defiant. "You're impersonating an officer on camera. That will be added to my report." Clayton felt a pulse of anger in his jaw but didn't react. Instead, he tapped the screen on his own phone, opening the live feed from his porch camera. "I'm recording too," he said. "Every second," Marjorie scoffed. "Go ahead. The sheriff's office already knows about your behavior." "You're right about that," Clayton replied. Before she could pause his tone, the distinct rumble of a familiar truck rolled down the hill. Owen's patrol vehicle. He parked just behind Clayton, leaving his emergency lights off but unmistakably present. Marjorie tried to regain footing. "Deputy Briggs, perfect timing. Please document this man's continued hostility. We are in the middle of a safety inspection." Owen stepped out, hat low, expression unreadable. "Miss Hale," he said, "you're blocking a public easement. That's a citable offense. That road is within our advisory zone," she insisted. "No, it isn't." Her face twitched. "I have photos proving." "And I have county maps," Owen cut in. "Also, Sarah Coleman has formally notified your HOA to cease unauthorized enforcement. I'm guessing you didn't share that email with your committee." Marjorie hesitated just long enough for the realization to crack through her confidence, but then she doubled down. "Deputy, this man has refused every reasonable compliance request. He is a threat to our neighborhood. I'm instructing my team," she gestured to the woman near the silver SUV, "to continue recording his behavior." Clayton spoke before Owen could step in. "Your team is trespassing. We're conducting a lawful safety operation. Not on a county easement and not without authority," Owen said sharply. "Move the cars now." Marjorie's live stream was still rolling, comments flashing rapid fire. "Why won't she move the car? Is he really law enforcement? This looks illegal." The tide was turning. Clayton felt it. Instead of obeying, Marjorie turned her phone dramatically toward Owen's patrol truck. "If the sheriff's office refuses to protect our community, we will escalate this matter. I'm filing another report." "You do that," Owen said, "but you should know something first." He looked at Clayton, giving him a slight nod. Clayton exhaled. Enough was enough. He stepped forward and pulled his badge from his inner pocket, the real one, heavy, polished, official. He held it out where the camera could see. Marjorie froze. The live stream froze. Even the woman beside the SUV dropped her phone. Owen said nothing. He didn't need to. The badge spoke louder than anything else on that gravel road. Clayton's voice remained calm, controlled, but iron hard. "Miss Hale, you've been filing repeated false reports against a sworn officer. You've been obstructing county access, and you've been acting under the false assumption that your HOA has power it doesn't." Marjorie blinked, throat tightening, color draining from her face. "No, this is manipulation, that badge could be." "It isn't," Owen said bluntly. "I've served with him for 12 years. He is a deputy with full authority when operating in official capacity." The live stream comments exploded. "Oh my God, she messed up. She's done." Did she seriously block a sheriff? Clayton took another step, not threatening, just undeniable. "This ends now," he said. "Move your vehicles or they get towed." Marjorie's voice cracked. You can't." "I can," he said. "And I will." Silence. Then slowly the silver SUV backed up, but Marjorie, she didn't move, her jaw shook, hands trembling around her phone. "I didn't know," she whispered, as if that would erase weeks of harassment. "It doesn't matter anymore," Clayton said. "You escalated this. You made it official." Owen got on the radio. "Dispatch, we're going to need a tow truck at Reed Ranch Road. One vehicle blocking a county easement. Driver refusing to comply." A beat of stunned silence. Then dispatch answered, "Copy that." "Tow en route." Marjorie let out a fragile, disbelieving laugh like her world had bent sideways. "You're towing my Lexus, my Lexus." Clayton didn't respond. He didn't gloat. He just stepped aside and let the consequences land where they belonged. This was only the beginning. A badge was powerful, but evidence was stronger, and Marjorie had handed him both. Now the question was, what would she do when the full truth finally hit her? The tow truck arrived with county markings unmistakable even from a distance. Blue stripe, sealed paperwork box, hydraulic arms already lowering. When it turned up the easement, the tension in the air snapped like a wire. Neighbors emerged from porches. Phones came out. Word had spread fast. Something was happening at the Reed Ranch. Marjorie's live stream was still running, but her hand shook so badly the camera kept dropping to her shoes. She tried desperately to salvage control. "Everyone watching," she said breathlessly. This is a misunderstanding. This man is abusing authority. He's threatening me." Clayton spoke loud enough for the camera to catch it. No threats, just a lawful response. The tow truck operator stepped out, clipboard in hand. Which vehicle? Clayton didn't answer. He didn't need to. Owen pointed directly at Marjorie's Lexus. Her breath caught like she'd been punched. "No, you can't tow my vehicle. I'm a community safety official." Owen responded flatly. "No, you're not." The operator got to work. Chains clinked. Metal arms slid underneath the Lexus. Every sound hit Marjorie like a verdict. "You're humiliating me," she whispered at Clayton, her voice cracking in front of everyone. "This is the consequence of blocking a county easement," Clayton said evenly. "Consequences you were warned about. But you're the sheriff," she snapped as if the realization came in delayed waves. "You're supposed to protect residents." "Residents," he said, "don't file false threat reports. They don't barricade county roads. They don't impersonate authority." The crowd murmured. People she'd recruited. People she'd convinced for weeks that Clayton was the danger. Now they were watching the truth peel away her story like old paint. The tow truck lifted the Lexus with a mechanical hiss. Marjorie reached out like she could physically stop it, her fingers trembling, but she didn't dare step into the lift zone. When the truck pulled away, she stood alone in the gravel, breathing hard, mascara threatening to smear. But Clayton wasn't done. Not with retaliation, not with humiliation, but with clarity. He stepped closer, stopping just inside her personal space, but not crossing any legal lines. "M. Hale," he said, his voice low and absolute. "You've misled your neighbors. You've interfered with county operations. You've targeted a sworn officer on private land. Your behavior is documented, time-stamped, and legally actionable." Her chin quivered. I didn't know you were law enforcement." You didn't need to know, Clayton replied. You only needed to follow the law. Behind him, Owen's radio crackled. Dispatched to Deputy Briggs' confirmation, property owner filed a preliminary notice of complaint through Attorney Coleman. Owen turned to Clayton. Sarah's moving fast. That made Marjorie flinch. An attorney. You're bringing lawyers into this. Damage has been done, Clayton said simply. This is the proper channel. She's escalating, Owen murmured to him, trying to gain sympathy. Clayton nodded. Let her, because now the camera was catching everything. Her panic, her contradictions, her fear. He reached into his truck and pulled out a sealed envelope. I'm required to give you this, he said, handing it to her. What is it? She asked, barely touching it like it might burn her fingers. Formal notice, he said, prepared by my attorney documenting your actions and advising you to cease contact. Marjorie's voice shook. Cease contact. I'm the compliance committee chair. You are, Clayton replied, a private citizen with no legal jurisdiction on this land. Her posture broke, just folded. She looked around the circle of neighbors staring at her, not with admiration, not with support, but with dawning judgment. Eli Turner, who usually avoided drama like wildfire, spoke up from his fence line. You told us he was dangerous, Eli said. You said he was hiding something. Marjorie stiffened. I didn't know. You didn't want to know, Eli said. Clayton didn't interfere. Let the neighborhood speak. Let the truth rearrange their alliances. Finally, Marjorie pressed a hand to her forehead. You blindsided me, she whispered. You filed 6 false reports, Clayton said. You blocked me in, you harassed my operations. You put your entire HOA at legal risk. The only person blindsided today is yourself. The weight of that hit her visibly. Owen leaned closer to Clayton. You ready? Clayton nodded and stepped back, positioning himself in full uniform where every neighbor could see. For everyone present, he announced. I am Deputy Clayton Reed, sworn officer with the County Sheriff's Department. This property is documented as pre-HOA ranch land outside all HOA jurisdiction. Any future attempts to block this easement, harass operations, or impersonate enforcement will be handled officially. A long silence. Then a strange thing happened. Someone clapped. Soft, hesitant, but real. Then another and another. Marjorie's face flushed to deep crimson as neighbors turned away from her and toward Clayton, the man she tried to paint as a threat. Owen added, tow truck will return with the impound receipt. Miss Hale will need to collect it at the county lot. Her last bit of defiance flared. You'll regret doing this. I'll take this to the board. Alas, no, Clayton said quietly. This isn't going to the board, this is going to court. That shut her up completely. Owen gestured toward his truck. Let's wrap this up. You've got enough evidence to bury this mess. Clayton nodded once. The path ahead was clear now. Documented, legal, unstoppable. And Marjorie, she finally understood what she'd been up against from the start. But the question now is heavier, sharper, and no longer rhetorical. What legal weight would fall on Marjorie Hale now? Clayton didn't have to wait long for the answer. 3 days after the blockade incident, Sarah Coleman called with a tone that meant business. Clayton Judge Kincaid granted our request, she said. Full evidentiary hearing next Tuesday. Already, he asked. Your footage, the tow documentation, the notices, everything is airtight, and Marjorie filed enough false reports to build your case for you. Clayton exhaled slowly. Momentum real, irreversible. She'll be there, he asked. Oh, she'll be there, Sarah said. She doesn't have a choice. By the time Tuesday arrived, the county courthouse foyer was buzzing. Word had traveled far beyond the HOA neighborhood. Videos circulated online. Neighbors whispered in grocery stores, and half the spectators in the hallway had come just to see the outcome. Eli Turner spotted Clayton and walked up cautiously. Just wanted you to know most of the folks who came today, they're supporting you. They feel duped, figured you should hear it. Clayton nodded, appreciate it. Then came the sound nobody missed. Hurried heels, sharp and frantic. Marjorie Hale entered the hall with a stack of disorganized papers and an expression that swung between outrage and fear. Her attorney, a visibly exhausted man in a wrinkled suit, struggled to keep her from bursting into arguments with anyone who made eye contact. When she saw Clayton, her jaw tightened, but this time she didn't speak. Maybe couldn't. Her attorney grabbed her elbow. For the 10th time, do not talk unless the judge asks you to. The courtroom doors opened and the tension followed everyone inside. Judge Ruth Kincaid took her seat, stern, efficient, and sharp-eyed. A woman known for cutting nonsense faster than any gavel could. She glanced between Clayton's table and Marjorie's. "Let's begin," she said. Sarah started laying out the timeline with surgical precision. "Your Honor, we will show that Ms. Hale engaged in systematic harassment of Mr. Reed, filed multiple false police reports, obstructed a county easement, impersonated enforcement authority, and created fabricated documentation to legitimize her actions." She displayed still frames from Clayton's porch cam, the barricade, the live stream, the false notices, the unauthorized survey flags. Each slide landed like a hammer. Then Sarah played a short clip, Marjorie declaring she was conducting a community safety investigation. Judge Kincaid lifted an eyebrow. "Ms. Hale, I'm unaware of any county program granting residents investigatory authority." Marjorie stood abruptly. "Your Honor, I was protecting my neighborhood." Her attorney tugged at her sleeve. "Sit down," but she didn't. He was hiding something. He was operating heavy machinery at odd hours. He was evasive, secretive, and he was a sworn deputy. Sarah cut in calmly, which Ms. Hale would have discovered had she made even a minimal attempt to verify her assumptions. Judge Kincaid held up a hand. "I will hear evidence, not speculation," Sarah resumed. "Furthermore, Your Honor, the defendant posted live accusations online while blocking a lawful county easement. Her own footage confirms willful obstruction." Another screen flashed, the tow truck lifting the Lexus. "And the most significant," Sarah added, holding up a thick file, "Ms. Hale's repeated written reports to law enforcement claiming Mr. Reed engaged in threats, criminal activity, and environmental violations, all of which were disproven within minutes by deputy review." Then she handed the file to the judge. Judge Kincaid read silently for a long moment. "Counsel for the defense?" she asked. Eventually, Marjorie's attorney cleared his throat. "Your Honor, my client misinterpreted the situation due to a lack of transparency from Mr. Reed. She felt unsafe. She broadcasted it," Sarah counted to an audience repeatedly. The judge turned toward Marjorie. "Ms. Hale, did you or did you not intentionally block the plaintiff's access to his property?" Marjorie swallowed. "I didn't know the laws. I thought that is not the question," the judge said firmly. Marjorie's voice shrank. "Yes." "And did you file multiple police reports alleging criminal behavior without evidence?" "I believed." "Did you file them?" Judge Kincaid repeated. A long trembling pause. "Yes." Judge Kincaid closed the file slowly, deliberately. "Miss Hale, the law does not bend to imagination. You acted with reckless disregard, causing measurable harm, disrupting county operations, and attempting to escalate a personal grievance into a legal matter without justification." Marjorie's face fell apart. Fear, regret, humiliation all at once. The judge continued. "As such, I'm issuing the following orders. Complete restitution for towing, legal fees, and operational disruptions. A civil penalty for each false report filed. A formal cease and desist order prohibiting further interference with Mr. Reed. And a restraining order for a period of no less than 18 months. Marjorie gasped softly. Her attorney closed his eyes like he expected exactly this outcome. But the judge wasn't finished. I am also forwarding this file to the county attorney to review for potential criminal charges related to false reporting and obstruction. Marjorie's knees buckled slightly. She steadied herself on the table, so ordered Judge Kincaid concluded. Her gavel struck once, clean, final echoing. Outside the courtroom, neighbors gathered around Clayton, not with pity, not with awkwardness, but with genuine respect. Eli approached first. She fooled a lot of us, he admitted. But seeing the real story today, you didn't just defend yourself. You defended the truth. Clayton nodded. Not boastful, not triumphant, simply relieved that justice had spoken louder than rumor. A few steps away, Marjorie stood alone, clutching the ruling, staring at it like a sentence she never imagined could land on her shoulders. When her eyes met Clayton's, she looked away. Not defiant, not combative, just defeated. The legal weight had fallen, and it was only the beginning of what she'd have to answer for. But now came the part no courtroom could impose, the reckoning within the community itself. When Clayton exited the courthouse, he expected silence. Maybe awkward glances. Maybe people avoiding him the way they had during Marjorie's campaign. Instead, he saw a small crowd of neighbors waiting. Eli at the front, hands stuffed in his jacket pockets, wearing a look that wasn't pity, wasn't apology, but something closer to respect. "You stood your ground," Eli said as he approached. "We should have asked questions sooner, trusted facts, not gossip." Clayton nodded once. It was enough. Another neighbor stepped forward. Mrs. Thorne, the one who'd once filmed him from her kitchen window on Marjorie's orders. She cleared her throat, holding out a container awkwardly. "I baked something. I figured after all that you deserved something sweet," then quickly added, "It's not an apology exactly, just acknowledgement." Clayton accepted it with a gentle smile. "Thank you." More neighbors approached, some shy, some embarrassed, but all making an effort to repair what had fractured. Conversations that had gone silent for months resumed. People asked about the ranch. Real questions, not suspicious ones. They asked about the fire training program he ran, about the road they once believed was theirs to police. And for the first time, Clayton felt the shift. They weren't talking to a stranger. They were talking to the man they should have known all along. Across the parking lot, Marjorie stood alone, her attorney gone, her influence shattered. Her world smaller than it had ever been. She didn't come near him. She didn't speak. She only held the judge's ruling like a weight she didn't know how to carry. Clayton didn't approach. Justice didn't need a victory lap. 2 days later, the HOA called an emergency meeting, not in a community center, but in a neighbor's backyard. Because, as one board member admitted, nobody wanted this to get out any farther. It got out anyway. By the afternoon, news spread across the community. Marjorie was removed from every committee position. The HOA publicly repealed her compliance guidelines, and a new rule was added. No resident shall claim or enforce authority beyond the official HOA charter. Some neighbors looked stunned, some relieved, some angry they'd been misled. But for the first time in months, the road leading toward Clayton's ranch remained clear. No SUVs, no barricades, no staged inspections. Peace. Actual peace settled over the easement. The next morning, Clayton parked his pickup by the gate with a toolbox and fresh cedar plank. The old gate had endured enough. Stains from notices, scratches from clips, dents from people slapping on one violation after another. He removed the last nail, lifted the weather-worn wood away, and replaced it with new solid timber. Smooth, clean, untouched by anyone's false authority. Before mounting it, he reached for his carving tool. Precise, sharp, familiar. And with slow, steady strokes, he etched a small sheriff's star in the bottom corner. Not a boast, not a warning, just a reminder. Quiet justice stands even when others don't see it coming. He mounted the gate, stepped back, and allowed himself a full breath of the new quiet. Eli wandered over from next door. "Saw the tow truck yesterday," he said. Guess she finally picked up her Lexus. Clayton raised an eyebrow. How'd that go? She paid the fees, Eli said, but didn't say a word. Folks say she might sell her place. Clayton didn't react. Didn't need to. People move on was all he said. Yeah, Eli replied. Sometimes communities do too. They stood in easy silence for a moment, both looking at the road that once served as the battleground for someone else's imaginary authority. Now it was just a road again. That afternoon, Owen stopped by on patrol, rolling down his window with a dry grin. You know, he said, you could have taken a desk job years ago, saved yourself a lot of trouble. Clayton smirked, would have missed all the fun. Fun, Owen repeated, laughing under his breath. Then he nodded toward the new gate. Looks good, solid, needed a new start. Owen's expression softened. You earned it. He drove off down the easement. No barricades, no interruptions, no HOA watching from behind curtains. Just a clear path. Later that evening, Clayton walked the line of the easement one more time, not out of fear, not out of suspicion, just habit. The fence posts stood where they always had. The survey markers Sarah had verified were untouched. The orange flag he'd collected earlier now sat archived in a folder labeled Hail. Exhibit C. Every step confirmed the truth he already knew. He hadn't just won. He'd set the record straight. Not through shouting, not through force, not through retaliation born of anger, but through law, through evidence, through a patience that outlasted someone else's delusion. And as the last light faded over the ranch, Clayton leaned on the rail and let himself feel finally what the past weeks had stolen from him. Peace, pride, release, a clear road, a clear name, a clear reminder that in the quiet valleys of Montana, justice didn't show up with noise. It showed up when the truth finally had room to stand. If you've ever dealt with an HOA or stood your ground for what's yours, drop the word justice in the comments. And if stories like this hit home, go ahead and subscribe. There's plenty more coming about grit land and the folks who refuse to be pushed off their own.